belief that you need to be always on to be successful is one of the most damaging myths in today's hyperconnected culture. At first glance, staying constantly available might seem like a sign of dedication, ambition, or even leadership. But the truth is, this mindset is a fast track to burnout, ultimately diminishing your productivity and long-term effectiveness. Burnout isn't just about feeling tired. It's a state of chronic stress that affects your mental clarity, emotional stability, and physical health. When you're perpetually on, you're depleting your energy reserves without giving your mind and body a chance to recover. And ironically, the more burnout you become, the less capable you are doing your job well. Most people underestimate how significantly burnout impairs their ability to function. It creeps in gradually, often disguised as just being tired or pushing through a busy week. But over time, it leads to decision fatigue, decreased focus, irritability, and even cynicism toward your work. You start to react instead of respond. You rush instead of thinking. You make mistakes, miss details, and find it harder to engage with others meaningfully. This isn't productivity, it's survival mode. And survival mode never produces your best work. Studies consistently show that rest and recovery are essential for high performance. Productivity is not linear. The idea that working longer equates to doing more is flawed. Human beings operate best in cycles of focused output, followed by intentional rest. When you break those cycles by trying to be constantly available, your performance plateaus or even declines. What's worse is that when you're stuck in this always-on cycle, you're too exhausted to notice how much your performance has dropped. You may be working harder but accomplishing less, all while believing you're staying ahead. Being overcommitted also robs you of the clarity needed to prioritize effectively. When you're burned out, everything feels urgent even when it's not. This leads to poor time management, shallow work, and a sense of being perpetually behind. Over time, that constant sense of urgency leads to chronic stress, which is linked to a host of health problems, including insomnia, anxiety, and cardiovascular issues. So while the intention behind being always on may be noble, wanting to stay ahead, be responsive, or meet expectations, the long-term consequences are both unproductive and unsustainable. The irony is that by trying to be everything to everyone all the time, you end up being less valuable to everyone. Your energy is your most important asset, and protecting it is not a weakness. It's a strategy. Those who learn to manage their energy instead of just their time are the ones who produce consistently strong work without burning out. True productivity isn't about how much you do, but how effectively you do it. And effectiveness comes from knowing when to step back, recharge, and return with clarity, focus, and purpose. Being always on might look impressive, but it's the disciplined rhythm of work and rest that moves the needle forward. Creativity doesn't thrive in chaos or constant activity. It needs space, silence, and moments of disconnection to emerge and flourish. The notion that being constantly engaged or perpetually plugged in fuels creativity is a misunderstanding of how the mind truly works. In reality, when your brain is always processing emails, messages, meetings, and notifications, there's little room left for original thought. Creativity requires mental breathing room. It emerges not when you're racing through tasks or reacting to inputs, but when your mind is allowed to wander, connect unrelated ideas, and reflect without interruption. When you're always on, you're in execution mode. Your brain becomes a task machine, focused on ticking boxes rather than exploring new possibilities. This mode is effective for completing straightforward or repetitive work, but it's detrimental to idea generation and innovative thinking. Creative breakthroughs rarely come while you're staring at a screen or fighting through a backlog of work. They often show up in the quiet moments in the shower, during a walk, or while doing something completely unrelated to the problem you're trying to solve. That's because the subconscious mind processes and rearranges information in the background when you give it the space to do so. But if you're constantly filling your brain with input, it never gets a chance. Creativity also requires emotional presence. You need to feel curious, inspired, or at least open-minded to tap into your imaginative side. When you're overworked and always reachable, your emotional bandwidth shrinks. You become less receptive to new ideas, more risk-averse, and more attached to routines that feel safe but are often stale. This emotional fatigue stifles experimentation and leads to uninspired work. no matter how much time you put in. The constant noise and pressure being always on dull your intuition and quiet the inner voice that guides creativity. That voice needs to be quiet to be heard. In many ways, doing less is a gateway to creating more. Taking deliberate breaks, disconnecting from digital devices, or simply allowing yourself moments of boredom can reignite your imagination. Boredom, often seen as a negative state, is a fertile ground for creativity. When the mind is not occupied with external input, it starts to create stimulation, daydreaming, storytelling, connecting dots, and generating ideas. These mental processes are essential for creative work, but they're drowned out by a non-stop stream of information and expectations. The irony is that in trying to stay hyperproductive and always available, people often block the very conditions that creativity needs to thrive. It's not about working harder or longer. It's about thinking differently. And that difference can only come when the mind is given the time and space to stretch, wander, and explore. Creativity is not a faucet you can turn on with more hustle. It's a quiet spark that needs air to breathe. Disconnecting isn't a luxury. It's a necessity for anyone who wants to do creative, meaningful work that stands out in a world full of noise. Setting boundaries around your availability is not just a matter of personal well-being. It's a signal to others about how you value your time and how you expect to be treated. When you're always on, the implicit message you send is that your time is freely available and that your needs can come second to anyone else's urgency. Over time, this pattern creates an unhealthy dynamic where others assume you'll respond immediately, solve problems instantly, or make yourself accessible at all hours. That doesn't build respect, it builds dependence and often a lack of appreciation. Respect isn't earned by being constantly available. It's earned by being clear, consistent, and confident in your limits. The truth is, people respect those who respect themselves. When you set boundaries, such as not answering emails after a certain time, declining last-minute requests, or protecting your off hours, you communicate that your time is valuable. This helps others understand how to work with you effectively. Boundaries aren't walls. They're guidelines that make collaboration smoother and expectations clearer. Without them, frustration builds. You may feel resentful for being taken advantage of, while others may feel unsure of when and how to reach you. Clarity breeds trust, and trust builds mutual respect. Moreover, boundaries improve your relationships, both personally and professionally. When you protect your energy, you show up more fully and intentionally in your interactions. You're not distracted, overextended, or silently stewing in resentment. You're present, focused, and engaged, which leads to higher quality communication and stronger connections. People are more likely to take you seriously when they know you're intentional about your time and decisions. That seriousness translates into credibility, and credibility strengthens your influence. In professional settings, especially leadership roles, modeling healthy boundaries is essential. If you're in a position of influence and you're constantly available, others will feel pressure to do the same, even if it's unsustainable. By demonstrating that it's okay to log off, take time for yourself, or decline low-priority demands, you permit others to do the same. This doesn't reduce performance. It enhances it. Teams that respect each other's time create more thoughtful workflows, communicate more effectively, and avoid burnout-driven turnover. Everyone benefits when the culture shifts from urgency to intentionality. The fear of setting boundaries often comes from a desire to be liked, needed, or seen as indispensable. But constantly saying yes or being overly accessible doesn't earn admiration. It often leads to being overlooked or undervalued. People tend to value what they have to respect and make an effort to access. That includes your time and presence. When you say no strategically, when you draw lines around your focus and energy, you remind others that your contribution is worth waiting for. You shift the dynamic from reactive to deliberate. And in doing so, you teach people how to treat you, not just as someone available, but as someone who's worthy of respect, collaboration, and trust. In a world obsessed with hustle, there's a deeply ingrained belief that the more you work and the more available you are, the more valuable you become. But the truth is that real impact doesn't come from being busy. It comes from being effective. Quality over quantity isn't just a productivity mantra. It's a fundamental principle for sustainable success. Being always on may help you respond quickly or appear committed, But if your work lacks depth, intention, or clarity, then constant activity becomes an illusion of productivity rather than actual progress. When you prioritize quantity, how many emails you answer, how many meetings you attend, and how many hours you put in, you risk spreading yourself too thin. Your attention becomes fragmented, your thinking becomes reactive, and your output becomes rushed. In that mode, you're not delivering your best, you're just keeping up. The irony is that the more tasks you pile on, the more likely you are to cut corners, miss details, or create work that has to be redone later. Busyness without direction often leads to inefficiency and burnout, not excellence. On the other hand, when you operate from a place of focus, you naturally prioritize the tasks that truly matter. You become more selective about where your energy goes, and as a result, your output carries more weight. High-quality work requires time, thought, and space, none of which are available when you're stuck in a cycle of constant responsiveness. Being deliberate about how and when you engage allows you to bring more clarity, creativity, and precision to everything you do. It also ensures that what you produce stands out, not because it's abundant, but because it's meaningful. Clients, colleagues, and audiences don't remember how quickly you replied or how many hours you clocked. They remember the value you brought. They remember the strategy you contributed, the insight you offered, and the solution you created. These are things that can't be rushed or faked. They require intention, and intention requires boundaries. Saying no to things that dilute your focus gives you the capacity to say a powerful yes to the things that matter most. And that's where your real value lies. Another overlooked truth is that doing less but doing it better leads to greater long-term trust and credibility. When people consistently see that your work is thorough, thoughtful, and impactful, they start to respect your time and trust your judgment. That trust buys you freedom. Freedom to set boundaries, to choose your projects, to lead without micromanagement. You no longer have to prove your worth through constant presence, because your work speaks for itself. In the end, the goal isn't to do more, it's to matter more. And mastering doesn't come from being always available or endlessly responsive. It comes from showing up with clarity, delivering work that reflects your full ability, and investing your energy where it counts most. Choosing quality over quantity isn't a step back. It's the smartest way forward. There's a widespread misconception that simply being online, responsive, or visibly active equates to productivity. The digital age has blurred the lines between presence and performance, making it easy to mistake motion for progress. But real productivity isn't about how much time you spend in front of a screen or how quickly you respond to messages. It's about the outcomes you produce and the value you create. Being always on gives the illusion of productivity, but without clear intention and focused action, that presence is often just noise. The truth is, many people spend a large part of their day reacting instead of creating. They answer emails, reply to chats, sit in back-to-back meetings, and feel mentally drained by the end of the day. Yet when they pause to reflect, they realize they didn't accomplish anything meaningful. That's because digital activity, while it feels busy, can be incredibly passive. You're responding to other people's agendas rather than driving your own. Productivity, on the other hand, comes from proactive, deliberate effort toward clear goals. It's the difference between spinning your wheels and moving forward. What makes this dynamic especially dangerous is that digital presence is easy to fake, and it's often rewarded. People who are constantly online may appear more committed, more reliable, or more valuable, even if their actual contributions are minimal. Meanwhile, those who take time offline to think deeply, work independently, or recharge can be mistakenly seen as disengaged. This creates pressure to stay visible at all times, leading to shallow work habits and chronic digital fatigue. The more we try to be always available, the less time we leave ourselves for deep focus, strategic thinking, or creative breakthroughs. Presence without purpose also drains mental energy. Every notification you check, every unnecessary task you perform, and every meeting you attend without clear value chips away at your cognitive bandwidth. Your brain is constantly switching gears, which lowers your ability to concentrate, make decisions, and solve problems effectively. The myth of multitasking has long been debunked, yet the digital environment encourages constant juggling. Over time, this not only reduces the quality of your work, but also diminishes your job satisfaction, leaving you feeling busy but unfulfilled. True productivity is quiet, often invisible, and deeply intentional. It happens in moments of undistracted concentration, when your mind is fully engaged with a task that moves you or your work forward. It doesn't require you to be online 24/7, nor does it rely on how many Slack messages you send in a day. It requires clarity about what matters, discipline to stay focused, and the confidence to disconnect when needed. Being digitally present all the time is not a badge of honor. It's a distraction from the real work that needs your full attention. When you begin to measure your day by the progress you make rather than the time you spend online, you reclaim your power and shift from appearing productive to being effective. Choosing not to be always on isn't just a personal decision, it's a cultural statement. When you set boundaries around your time and energy, you're not only protecting your well-being, you're modeling healthy behavior for everyone around you. Whether you're in a leadership position, a team member, a freelancer, or even part of a family unit, how you manage your availability influences others. It sends a message about what's acceptable, what's sustainable, and what's truly important. And in a world where burnout has become the norm, that message is more powerful than ever. Most people don't realize how deeply habits of overwork are learned behaviors, often reinforced by the environments we operate in. If everyone else is answering emails at 10 p.m., skipping lunch breaks, or joining meetings while sick, it starts to feel like that's a standard, even if it's completely unsustainable. But when one person steps back and reclaims their time, it permits others to do the same. It breaks the illusion that constant busyness equals dedication. Instead, it shifts the focus toward thoughtful prioritization, energy management, and long-term resilience. Leadership, especially, comes with the responsibility to model behavior, not just dictate it. When a leader sets clear boundaries, logs off at a reasonable hour, honors weekends, or declines meetings that don't serve a purpose, it creates a ripple effect. It tells the team that rest isn't just allowed, it's encouraged. It shows that performance isn't measured by how many hours someone puts in, but by the quality and intention of their contributions. This kind of modeling builds trust, loyalty, and a healthier, more sustainable workplace culture. Even outside formal leadership roles, your choices still make an impact. Colleagues notice when you honor your calendar, when you don't respond to messages after hours, or when you speak up about workload. These small actions can help others feel less pressure conform to unrealistic standards. They see that it's possible to be professional, dedicated, and respectful of your limits. That awareness creates space for others to do the same without guilt or fear of judgment. Beyond the workplace, this principle extends to personal relationships and communities. When you're clear about when you're available and when you're not, people learn to value your time more. They also feel safe for setting their boundaries, knowing that mutual respect is a foundation. It's a quiet form of leadership, one that doesn't demand attention, but inspires change through example. It's about walking your talk, not just talking about balance, but living it. Being always on isn't a requirement for success. It's a learned response to a culture that rewards overextension. But when you challenge that norm and choose to lead with balance, you create an opening for others to do the same. You become a living example that productivity and self-respect can coexist, that burnout is not a badge of honor, and that protecting your energy is not selfish. It's responsible. In choosing to step back, you don't diminish your value. You multiply your influence. Rest is often seen as the opposite of productivity, but in reality, it is a core component of high performance. The most successful people across industries, from elite athletes and top executives to artists and entrepreneurs, understand that recovery isn't a luxury. It's a strategy. They don't view downtime as wasted time. Instead, they recognize it as a necessary investment in their ability to think, make smart decisions, and sustain peak performance over the long term. Operating in a constant state of on drains your cognitive resources and reduces your emotional resilience, eventually diminishing your effectiveness no matter how motivated you are. The human brain and body aren't designed for nonstop output. Just like a muscle that needs rest between workouts to grow stronger, your mind needs regular breaks to reset, recharge, and recalibrate. Without that recovery, mental fatigue sets in, decision-making becomes slower, your patience wears thin, and your problem-solving abilities decline. Even your memory suffers. And yet, People continue to push through exhaustion, thinking that willpower alone can make up for the loss in performance. The truth is, pushing harder without rest often leads to diminishing returns. You end up working more hours to fix the mistakes or inefficiencies caused by your burnout. What separates high performers from the chronically busy isn't just talent or ambition. It's how they manage their energy. They know when to lean in and when to pull back. They build in periods of rest deliberately, using breaks, vacations, boundaries, and even micro moments of stillness throughout the day to stay mentally sharp and emotionally steady. They protect their energy as fiercely as they protect their schedules. They understand that sustainable output requires balance, not brute force. Moreover, rest isn't just about recovering from exhaustion. It's also where growth happens. When your brain is in a relaxed state, it's better able to form connections, integrate learning, and generate creative insights. Many breakthrough ideas don't come while grinding through tasks, but while stepping away from them. That's because rest allows the subconscious mind to process information in new ways, often leading to solutions that logic alone couldn't reach. In this way, rest fuels not only stamina but also innovation. There's also an emotional aspect to rest that's often overlooked. When you are rested, you're more present, more empathetic, and more emotionally intelligent. You communicate better, collaborate more smoothly, and respond to stress with greater calm. These soft skills are critical to long-term success, and they are sharpened not in the rush of overwork, but in the space created by rest. Choosing to rest isn't about being lazy or disengaged. It's about being smart. It's a strategic move to preserve your energy, sharpen your focus, and protect your health. The mindset of constant hustle might seem admirable, but it's often unsustainable. High performance isn't about how long you can go without a break. It's about how well you use your energy when you're on. And the key to using that energy wisely lies in knowing when to stop, reset, and begin again with clarity and strength. Choosing not to be always on is not a sign of weakness or lack of ambition. It's a conscious decision to protect your energy, preserve your creativity, and work with intention rather than urgency. In a culture that glorifies busyness and instant responsiveness, stepping back takes courage. But it's in that space, away from the noise and pressure, that real value is created. When you set boundaries, prioritize quality over quantity, and embrace rest as a tool for performance, you break free from the illusion that constant activity equals progress. You begin to lead yourself and others with clarity, calm, and purpose. Being always available might earn momentary attention, but being strategically present earns lasting respect. The truth is, your best work, your most meaningful relationships, and your greatest insights come not when you're endlessly plugged in, but when you're deeply engaged, fully focused, and courageously balanced.